thank you for being here. I'm Cynthia Barber. I'm your Deputy City Manager. If I could please take just a moment to recognize our elected officials and our appointed officials. If you would please stand and wave. I have with us today, we have Commissioner Curtis Richardson. We have Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox. Commissioner Rick Minor. City Attorney Cassandra Jackson. Assistant City Manager Wayne Tedder. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your leadership and ongoing support of these efforts. Tonight's meeting is a continuation of the robust community involvement that we've had now underway for about 4 years, which started out of an effort to relocate the Tallahassee Police Department headquarters and then the subsequent redevelopment of the former Northwood Mall parcel. This project's success centers on collaboration, so we're very, very pleased that you are here with us tonight. We'd like to thank those of you who've been a part of the process over the last 4 years. We also like to encourage you to remain a part of this process. It is very rare that we get the opportunity to reimagine space like we have with the opportunity here at the Northwood site, including the development of the Tallahassee Police Department. So let's make the best of it by making sure that we get as much feedback in the process as possible to make sure we get what our community wants and what our community needs. I'll tell you a little bit about how things will flow tonight. There'll be a short presentation about where the project stands, and then there'll be feedback. We'll give you an update on the feedback that we've received to date from the community. And then after our update, we'll move to breakout sessions where you get an opportunity to interact directly with those who've been involved in the project. You can ask more questions, we'll dive into the details, and then you have an opportunity to share additional ideas. If you were here back in January when we had more than 200 people who were a part of the process, this process will be familiar to you. But it was a great opportunity to hear directly from our citizens, including our little ones. I received quite a bit of feedback for some of the young people who were here, including young elementary school students who could see a need for our community and wanted to make sure I understood what their feedback was. And they followed up and sent it to us on email. To better understand where we're going, I think it is important that we understand where we've been and what we've accomplished so far. As I mentioned, this has been very, very important to us to make sure there was a lot of feedback from the community about this project. As we started to develop the police department, we knew we were building a police department, but there were other things that grew out of this process and other needs that were identified by our community. So I'll tell you a bit about that in a little bit. When folks ask whether or not we really need to build a police department, I'll tell you that TPD has operated from its current site on 7th Avenue since 1972. So not only are there space constraints, but there are also constraints in terms of how the building can be utilized. An evaluation of TPD's current headquarters was done several years ago. It was actually back in 2017 as we developed the strategic plan for the police department. And one of the things that was identified was the need for a new headquarters that would serve a broader purpose than simply housing the police department personnel, but also a facility that would have more community amenities and that would better support the department's adoption of a community policing approach. So how do we create space that allows for, facilitates, and encourages more participation with the community in a proactive way? So from 2018 to 2020, we engaged in a significant outreach effort with the public to identify the location for the facility. During that time, we heard feedback from all over the community. I think we received about 60 or so ideas from the community as to where they'd like to see the project located. But one of the things we heard that there was a need for it to be centrally located, that it needed to be large enough to accommodate other uses besides simply policing-related functions, and then it also needed to include some community spaces, again, which contributes to that ability to fully implement a community policing strategy. So following a very dynamic community engagement process, which included public meetings similar to these, stakeholders meetings with specific community groups, one-on-one conversations with interested citizens, online surveys, and just a number of ways that we received feedback, the Northwood site was chosen for the home of the police department. But in that process, we also heard from the public about other needs, and one of those was a need for additional fire station support, which will become Station 17, which will be located on Lake Bradford Corridor, along with the Community Resilience Hub. So we're excited about those two projects as well. The site selection process occurred, and we've continued the review of the police department needs. We've prepared the site for new uses, and then we've also continued to engage the public, which this is an extension of that process. So following a very competitive procurement process, our City Commission approved in 2019 for the city to bring on a consultant to help guide us through this process. So we've brought on additional architectural and design support, and we're very pleased that our partners are here tonight. We have the Architects Design Group representatives. Are they here? Where are they in the room? Oh, right there. Okay, right there in front of me. Good to see you. You'll hear more from them, and you'll get an opportunity to interact very directly with them. One of the things that they learned in working with us is how important it is that they engage directly with our community, and how important it is to make sure our project reflects the interests and the needs of our community. We also, assisting them, we have a professional firm, Architects Lewis and Whitlock, who are also here with us tonight. They were here in January for the last meeting. You'll get an opportunity again to interact very directly with them. In March of 2021, our interior demolition began at the former Northwood Mall site. So some of those who've been here for a while, we're very familiar with that site. And then in August of 2021, we started to bulldoze the buildings. And demolition is expected to be completed in the spring. So it is now a perfect time for us to start envisioning this area and what the future could bring for this site. I'd like to take a moment and recognize Mr. John Powell. John, if you'll wave. John is the city's project manager for this effort, and he's been engaged in the project from the very early stages of the project. And so he's very familiar with the construction process and the site development. If you'd like to engage him more directly, he'll be available also following the presentation today, and you can ask more questions about that process if you would like to do that. So in January, when we were here, and it was a rainy day, we really didn't expect much participation at all, generally speaking, because the weather was so bad. But then again, knowing this community and being a part of the community, I fully expected that our public would be here and that you would care enough and be involved in this process. So we were very, very excited to have over 200 people participate. We received a lot of ideas, a lot of innovative ideas about the site. And so today you'll get an update. Devin will provide an update on what we've heard. And so what I'd like to do next is I'd like to ask Devin if you would come to the microphone. And Devin is with the planning department, and he'll share more with you about what we've learned from our residents thus far, and how that feedback is being incorporated and how it will continue to be incorporated throughout the process. And you'll get these types of updates from us on a fairly routine basis as there are major milestones and developments in the project. So Devin, if you come forth, please.
Thank you, Ms. Barber. Good evening. Good to see a lot of familiar faces and some new faces. And like she said, it was cold and rainy last time we were here, but almost 200 people came out and really talked to us to share ideas with what they wanted to see for our community, for this site. And this is just kind of a couple slides here behind me of what we showed that night and then the interaction that we had with the community. We had a lot of feedback. I know there's folks here tonight that probably are here to see how we incorporated that feedback. Again, we've been working with the professional consultants, ADG and Lewis and Whitlock on this. Any feedback that we received, we made sure that we got that feedback over to them. They provided any feedback they received over to us. And we were able to incorporate that. And what you'll see as you get to go around the room tonight is really how everything that we started seeing in the room, how that gets put into the overall master plan for this site. that's something that's going to be really exciting going forward. Some of the things that we heard, they're already in this area. So we were able to kind of put together some boards, and I'll let Rodney talk a little bit more about that, but to show things that are in the area that you want to see and things that may not be in the area that you want to see. So balancing these things is something we have to do for our community, and I think it's good that we've been able to have this real open conversation to start seeing how we balance this as we move forward in our community. With that, I really want to kind of hand it over to Rodney, as they're our consultants, to talk a little bit about the process and how we've collaborated together, and let them really get into the process of what we've done so far to get you where we are tonight. And then once he's done, we'll go around the room and talk with you individually, anyone that wants to come up at the stations and talk to us. Rodney?
Buttons. Good evening. Thank you, Devin, Miss Barber. Pick my distance here. Again, as Devin mentioned, I'm Rodney Lewis with Architects Lewis and Whitlock here in Tallahassee. We're working under the umbrella of ADG. We've got Architects Design Group here. Basically, anyone from the city planning department, staff, ALW, or ADG, if you could all kind of raise your hand, you're going to see folks around the corner, around the edge of the building. They're all here to assist in the exercises as we break out and start to discuss some of this in further detail. But quickly, I'm going to go through a little bit of the information, kind of what we've accomplished in since our last meeting about 2 months ago, kind of walk you through that. As Devin mentioned, as we were gathering information, he showed you pictures of the boards where we wrote down a lot of the comments for the uses that everyone wanted to see on this property, on the Northwood property. Yeah, get a little bit of feedback on it. So what we did was took and we documented that, and you're going to see around the room is we began to chart that information or map that information. So we took a 1 mile radius around Northwood property and began to look at the different uses that were requested. Was it medical uses? Was it restaurants? Was it outdoor space, exercise space, things of that nature? So what you're going to see in those maps is those particular uses, and then it helped us identify potential uses that were not within that 1 mile radius. And those are things that we can focus on that would be good uses for the community within this piece of property. Here's an example, as you'll be able to spend some time looking at some of that information as we get into the breakout sessions. And this is a graph, circular graph. Let me take my glasses back and forth so I can see things. It's tough getting old. So as you see in the chart, and I'm going to pull the pointer out now as well. As you begin to see in this circular graph, the distance here represents kind of the impact or the number of times that we had those uses requested. So you start to see that in terms of its depth on that graph. And some of these were great uses, whether it was performing arts, whether it was outdoor dining spaces, government facility like library, things like that, resources and support for the area. There's also an ongoing traffic analysis and market analysis for the property. That is going in concert with the master plan as we further the design efforts along. So let's talk a little bit about the site. This is an image of our current site. As Devin showed, the building is gone now, so we've got a big empty site that we're working with. Last community meeting, we were looking at a site plan. This is where the current mall was removed. This is when we were looking at the geometry of the roadway. So dealing with safety and access points to TPD, where could we define that roadway that would bisect this property and give us these developable areas on the site. So with this graph, we began to look at how traffic would be impacted, pedestrian, vehicular traffic, things of that nature. And this was a kind of a working model that we got great feedback from everyone on. What we've done Since then, as we've started to look at this three-dimensionally, so now with the site, this is the north finger headed out here. This is the south edge. MLK is here, Tharp Street is here. A new boulevard bisecting the property here, and TPD on the western edge. One thing that you'll see that's different here is the roadway, the new roadway that's going from south to north now terminates at this existing parking lot. Before, we were actually showing the roadway continuing on. There is infrastructure there, parking exists there, there's a roadway there that's adequate. So in lieu of basically putting a road in there and dictating how that piece might be developed, I think it's best that we leave that potential there for the future. One thing here also you're going to see on these maps is it's a now, next, future approach. So we understand that we can't take a master plan and plop it down on a piece of property and say, hey, we're done, everything magically appears. That's not the way it works. It's a progressive process. So what is happening now is TPD is being built, the roadway is being built, so the infrastructure is being put in place. What's also now is Hooters and El Jalisco. Those out parcels exist. They have long-term leases, so they will be there for the foreseeable future until development potential comes to the table. Some of the other interesting aspects of this now proposal is public parking, which we're calling a mobility hub. So this public parking, EV charging, potential bus stop, Star Metro, drop and ride, shared ride services is going to serve, because the TPD project actually has a large public meeting space of about 300 people. So having that parking available adjacent to that is very important. It also gives us these out parcels or developable areas, as we talked previously, for potential use. Now, from a now perspective, those could also be temporary uses. Could it be a farmer's market? Could it be a car show? There are uses that are going to take place and we want to take place in this area until it is developed. A big aspect of this development is the streets, the circulation. So the roadway, pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular. We've got three sections here of our roadways. This is what we would consider our primary roadway, which is that south to north roadway, a typical section. So wide sidewalks, trees, parallel parking, bicycle path, roadway, and a planted median, duplicated on the other side. It's about 100 foot wide. We continue through that space, or through the site. One of the great aspects of this type of roadway is the fact that we have areas for benches, seating, opportunities for the public to engage within those spaces. This particular section is a little further down the road. This is directly in front of the new TPD headquarters. Very similar roadway, with exception of the area in front of TPD, will not have parallel parking. From a safety standpoint, we're trying to keep a distance there from having parked cars. We also have, within that safety separation, we have a large green space that could serve as native gardens, a bioswale, potential learning zone, where we have the fact that we need to protect that building from vehicles coming at it. So instead of putting a row of bollards in front of it, maybe we have low walls. They could be educational opportunities for whether it's about the plants, or whether it's about TPD, or whether it's about the City of Tallahassee. Could be public art. A lot of different possibilities there. And this is showing the potential in terms of proximity to the police headquarters, but also what could be developed on the other side, and that could be 1, 2, or 3 stories. That's all part of the future. Secondary roadways. So we have some smaller fingers of roadways that would come off of that primary road. What we'd like to see here is the potential for these roads to be separated, a larger median, This green space could be a nice park area. It provides different opportunities for use for either residents, business, or people visiting the site. I'm going to check my notes now.
Can I jump in and tag team something?
Yes, please do.
So Rodney's about to get to a part of this where he talks about some directives that we were given from our commission at the last commission meeting. And that was to look at the site and see if we could fit a performing arts center on the site. So what you're going to start seeing now as Rodney gets to the next part is from that direction, they have been tasked to go in and look and see what it would take to be able to fit a performing arts center. And Rodney, can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. As Devin mentioned, the idea of performing arts, actually take a look at what could be a venue site for that. So going from now to next, so what could be next on this particular property? When we look at the southern development zone, it's really emerged as the most likely location for use. You've got the adjacent Raw Arts Magnet School that's in that area, and ease of community access really makes this quadrant a great spot for community and arts. Also, there's the potential for development of this mobility hub. So could you have some covered shelters there? Could you have a smaller food venue, expand your EV charging? Maybe you've got some solar canopies. Maybe even potentially have a parking garage there instead of surface parking. When you start looking at development of other zones, if you do have some vertical parking, you can actually minimize some of your surface parking, which is taking up more area on the property. You also have some direct connectivity to greenway areas here along the boulevard and connectivity between this highly public venue and the public space of the TPD headquarters. And then you also start looking at temporary uses, again, for areas, whether it's surface parking, festivals, night out with TPD is also a great use for that hard space. I know this is a lot of information to kind of take in. We're going from kind of a sketch site plan to something three-dimensional and a lot of different ideas being thrown at you all, but it's taking the input that we've had from you all and beginning to implement that into potential ideas. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to have now, next, and future. We're still working on the future aspect of this. So we'd love to get some feedback from you all about the temporary uses or some of the ideas, kind of what we have brought back to what would be great with that spiral map in terms of those uses. And with that, I think I'd like to say that we're going to break up from the, if you have direct questions, please let's ask them at the stations, and we'll try and work through as much of that as we can tonight.
And just one more thing, thanks for all coming out again tonight, and I hope that you're able to get around and talk to us. And we want to thank the Senior Center for having us here tonight. Sheila and the Senior Center, we appreciate you hosting us here, and we look forward to talking to everyone around the room. Thank you.
So there'd be a mixture of I think there would be one main stoplight kind of at the main entrance, but there would be stoplights, raised pedestrian walk.
Down and connect to Boone. But since we don't know what's going to happen there, we don't have decisions made, so the road's just going to, for now, it's going to stop. We're not within a mile.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
I don't see Jim.
Is there any thought about trying to have an exit or entrance off of Monroe? Somehow get to Monroe?
Okay.
The same group of people, right? So, yeah, and even sometimes in the same ways, right?
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of talking to the people like you have.